Well, hi, welcome to USITT's Follow Up Fridays. Thanks for being here with us today. This is a series we created to reconnect with the exhibitors that were able to join us for Virtual Anywhere in March, Virtual Anywhere 2021 conference, the online conference. Today, I'd like to welcome Tyler DeLong of DeLong Rigging Solutions. Thanks for being here, Tyler. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. Thanks for having me, Christine.
Excellent. No, we appreciate you offering your expertise to our audience. I don't have much to say, and nobody came here to listen to me anyway. So, Tyler, let's share your screen.
All right, let's dive right in.
And get right to it.
All right. For starters, just so everyone knows, sort of the format I like to go with is if you have questions, put them in the comment section. As I see them, I will try to answer them. I want this to be as interactive as possible. So if you got a question, drop it right in there. On that note, we are going to get started. So we've got mitigation of out of balance systems. For starters, a little bit about myself. I'm Tyler DeLong. I'm the owner and partner of DeLong Rigging Solutions. I'm dual ETCP certified in both theatrical and arena rigging, and I'm an ETCP recognized trainer. Sorry, no research credits for this one, but still just, I am a recognized trainer. I'm also a voting member of the rigging work group. I spent over a decade touring the world, mostly as a road rigger or flyman. Another person going to get mentioned is my old man. He is not here today because he's currently 200 feet in the air on an H-beam. It's pretty hot up there, so he's a little busy, but you'll see him in a few of the videos, and his resume is a little more impressive than mine, so I like to just sort of glaze past this slide. So in this webinar, we are going to cover, what is an out of balance system, why they are dangerous, common reasons why systems become unbalanced, ways to secure an out of balance system, and safe manners of moving an out of balance system. All right, before we really dive in, some quick parameters. We're talking about single and double reeve systems only, counterweight systems, all right? And we are assuming that only a qualified individual is handling these systems. Making it through this webinar doesn't automatically make you a qualified individual. Just there's no replacement for hands-on in-person training. But hopefully by the end of this webinar, you'll know these methods exist. And if you're in a situation and you feel comfortable and you are qualified, you'll have just a little bit of information to go with and a little reminder on how to do these things safely. All right, let me go ahead and check those comments real quick, make sure we don't have anything popping up yet. All right, rock on. So going ahead and talking about this for a second. Before we get going, just want to make sure everyone understands that we're talking about out of balance. What that means is you've got your counterweight arbor over here, and you've got your batten or pipe out here. In a balanced system, these two things weigh the same. If for some reason your batten is heavier than your arbor, or your arbor is heavier than your batten, it is out of balance. So, moving on. All right, so what is an out of balance system? Pretty simply, an out of balance system is when your arbor, your batten doesn't weigh the same. Anytime that you're in a situation where either the arbor or the batten weighs more than the other, it's considered out of balance. Generally speaking, when a system is considered out of balance by 50 or more pounds, or it's out of balance by 50 or more pounds, someone would classify it as an out of balance system. Does anyone know why that is our threshold? Let's go ahead and drop it in the comments if you do. All right, well, I will go ahead and fill that one in. And the answer is because of the counterweights we're using. Different houses have different weights that they use. Some of them are 20 pounds. Some of them can be up to 60-pound weights. It is really hard to get a perfectly balanced system when you are dealing with different size bricks. Especially when you're working on increments of, say, 20, 30 pounds. It's hard to get spot on. So that's why we allow for things to be a little bit out of balance before we actually classify it as an out of balance system. Also, per the ANSI code on counterweight systems, your rope block should be able to hold a system that is 50 pounds out of balance. And that's another reason why that's our magic number, is that is what rope blocks should be holding. So, moving on. All right, so why are out of balance systems dangerous? Well, I mean, quite simply put, if it's out of balance, they can run away. When I say run away, I mean you have a system that is in a free fall. Either the arbor is coming in uncontrolled or the pipe is coming in uncontrolled. This is a bad thing. I mean, things crashing down are always bad things. That being said, what can happen in a very bad situation is your arbor will come in, it'll crash into the rail, and it'll shoot all of those bricks all over the place. 60-pound projectiles, they're bad. Once all the weights are out of the arbor will fly back up, and the pipe will come down and crash into anything or anyone that is under it. And that's bad. So, some situations where we would see out of balance systems. The most common place you're going to see that is actually going to be during a load in or load out situation. During load ins and load outs, you're going to be putting things on the pipe and taking them off. Generally speaking, your flyman is going to try and make sure that the pipe stays heavy while your arbor is up high and stuck against the head block. So you load your pipe, then you load your arbor. Sometimes, particularly in professional roadhouses, they will intentionally make the arbor a little bit heavier than what's on the pipe at that moment. When you're going to see that typically is when they're doing things like putting a video wall on a pipe, or perhaps they've got a piece of hard scenery that's on downtails, that's cabled down from the pipe, in which case your arbor is going to be out of weight. It's not a good situation. It's not something that anyone who isn't qualified to be doing it should do. That being said, it happens. Another situation where you see out of balance systems is when somebody who doesn't know what they're doing has been touching the system. I know it never happens. You never have, a kid in an educational institution walk in and play for counterweights, or someone who just didn't quite get enough training but managed to bluff their way into it. When this happens, you end up with out of balance systems. So moving on, let's talk about how we actually secure an out of balance system. We're going to watch a video. I'm going to stop a few times during this video to discuss some of the finer points. But let's just go ahead and get this rolling.
All right, let's talk about how we would secure a counterweight line set.
It stopped rolling. Stand by. My apologies.
For it to be out of balance. And this is something that we might do if we have a busy loading going on and there's 2 or 3 pipes being worked on and we want to secure this. We're still going to be at the rail, we're still going to be nearby, but we're not going to be standing right at it. So we want it to be secure while we're not focused on it. We're going to talk about 3 ways to secure it. The first way I'm going to talk about is with an axe handle. An axe handle is an easily accessible piece of hardware, so we'll look at that first. I've kicked the foot block and pulled the back line to lift the foot block. Then I'm going to take my first wrap and wrap that around a couple of times until I've got some slack. Now I'm going to put my axe handle into that opening. And I'm going to continue to take a couple of wraps to tighten that up. And then I'm going to put my handle through the T-rail to keep it from spinning. This is a very secure wrap and will hold a substantial load. The axe handle is not my first choice if I'm not going to be right here with it. It will work, but I might take another precaution and take a piece of sash cord and tie it to the T, or just to secure it, so that if in the process of loading the batten, they bounce the pipe around, which could bounce the arbor, the lines could move, things could swing around a little bit, and just the essence of this method is that axe handle has to stay in place. If it comes loose from the T-rail and slips and tips, then it can spin and turn. But as long as it's securely in place, that method is very secure and will hold a substantial load. A second method.
All right, I'm going to stop it right there for a second. We're going to talk about the axe handles. So, the axe handle method. I'm a big fan of this method, but it does have some drawbacks. The main drawback is, as he mentioned, you really have to stand there and keep a hand on it. If it pops out, it can spin, you can lose the load. That being said, I used to tour a 1,600-pound video wall that actually was put onto house pipes in all the roadhouses. In order for that video wall to get built, we would have to build the top section of it on the pipe, but load the arbor for the entire wall and slowly slip the arbor in and the wall out as we're building the wall to get it back in balance. I would not recommend doing that. But the nice thing with the axe handle method is I could carry some of those in stock, and when I hit a roadhouse that was not quite sure how to handle the situation, I could train them in this method and leave them an axe handle as a gift. So axe handles, they work, but you've got to keep your hand on there and you've got to be confident. This is definitely a method that you want to be taught in person, not just from this seminar, but you want someone to teach you how to do this and to teach you the right methods and some of the do's and don'ts. So moving on to the next method.
Hey, Tyler.
Yes.
Before you move on, just because a few of our viewers were late, thank you for reiterating that they should be trained on how to do this first. But can we talk again about that? This video assumes that you've been trained, you have experience with rigging, and this class alone isn't meant to, give you all your answers.
Absolutely. I will absolutely go ahead and throw that out there again. Some of the parameters for this discussion is that we're talking about counterweight systems, particularly single and double purchase systems. And we are assuming that the operator is a qualified individual. Just making it through this webinar doesn't make you a qualified individual. Nothing can replace in-person hands-on training. The purpose of this webinar is so everyone knows that these methods are out there and for a brush up from those, or a brush up for those who are qualified to be doing this. Let's see. I see I've got a question from Bill Marks. I'll go ahead and answer that. See, why use the far side of the rope as opposed to just twisting? I'm not 100% sure what you're asking, but I think what you're asking is why we're using the axe handle to shove it through and twist it instead of just twisting the rope. And the answer is just twisting the rope is a method we're actually going to talk about here in a couple minutes. The axe handle, one of the upsides on using it and stick it into the T-track is that by doing that, you actually can do 2 or 3 line sets in a row. For example, like that video wall I was talking about, on the video wall, a lot of houses didn't have arbors large enough for us to hang the wall on just one batten. So we'd have to marry 2. So I would actually have to secure 2 line sets right next to each other. And with this method and using the T-track behind, it keeps everything out of the way and nice and clean. Of course, you still want to have one guy per axe handle, but that would be one of the upsides of using the axe handle as opposed to just wrapping the rope and holding on, or using some of the other methods that we're going to discuss. Did that answer your question, Bill? All right. So moving on to the next method. Oh, sorry, clarifying. In the video, we were told to lift the tension block with our foot and pull the back rope forward instead of just twisting it. Is there a specific reason? Okay. No, there's not a specific reason. I know that a lot of fly people prefer to use that method because it gives you a lot of slack in the rope, so you can get a lot of twist in it very quickly without having to fight with the rope. So you leave the tension block on it, sometimes you can have trouble getting enough wraps to actually get the appropriate amount of tension in the system. Does that answer your question, Bill? Rock on. You're very welcome, Bill. All right, moving on to the next one.
It's very similar, except that here where I've got that wrap twisted together, I'm going to use a rope binder. Now, rope binders come in various shapes and sizes. They're manufactured by at least a couple of different companies. This particular one is homemade. It's older than I am. I couldn't tell you who made it or what they modeled it after. But the basic premise is that when you put the binder on and you put pressure on it, it bends the rope. And that friction created by that rope being bent out of line can hold a pretty substantial load. When I hook it here at the bottom, I have to finagle around a little bit so it gets a good hook on both lines. And then if I let go of it, it'll just lay against the neighboring rail here, or neighboring operating line. I'm gonna take it the other way, around the lines on the other side, so that I'm actually putting a little more twist into it, instead of letting it relax a half twist. This is a very secure method of holding the line set while it's out of balance. And will hold more than the Arbor in most cases. One other point to consider here is that because we know we're going to load this out of balance, and for a period of time while the piece of scenery is being assembled, it's going to be out of balance, I'm going to go ahead and take the ring off the handle, because once it's out of balance and this rope has more tension on it, it'll become even more difficult than it is right now to get that ring off the handle. So I will go ahead and I'll leave the lock closed just because there's no reason not to. But the ring I will go ahead and take off before it's loaded. Another method.
All right. So let's talk about that one for a hot second here. So this method is very similar to the axe handle method. The difference is that with this one, I'm trying to think of how to word this appropriately. With this method, you're still counting on the twist and you're counting on the rope lock. You've got a little bit more mechanical advantage with the actual rope binder. Sometimes they're also called too as Uncle Buddies, which I'm not quite sure where that colloquialism came from, but it's pretty common to hear that in certain parts of the country. With this method, because it's not depending on axe handles staying horizontal, a little bit of bounce in the rope is probably going to be able to hold the system, or not going to cause it to pop out. It is locked on the rope. It's not going to pop with a little bit of a bounce, whereas an axe handle can do that. Looking at our comment section real quick, Jeremy mentioned that it's important to note that even with the axe handle, you can still have a runaway situation. Jeremy, you're very correct. Honestly, with pretty much every method, you can still have a runaway situation if you are not doing it properly. The number one thing is to make sure that you are properly trained in these methods, not just by watching these videos, but actually hands-on training, and that you're paying attention while you do it. The vast majority of mistakes that happen when you're using any of these methods happen because you're not paying attention. Just throwing that out there and adding on what Jeremy had to say. But Jeremy, you are very correct that you can still have a runaway situation in these situations. Moving on with the video.
Which is a good method, another similar method that doesn't require extra hardware or requires more easily accessible hardware, would be to use a snub line. And when we snub it, the line we're snubbing it with is not going to hold the load. The line we're snubbing it with is going to hold the wraps in the line. So we're going to wrap the operating line. We're going to kick the foot block. We're going to take slack. we're going to take our wraps and work our wraps around nice and tight. And then I've got, about a 10-foot piece of sash cord. Sash cord, depending on what exact sash cord you have, is probably going to be somewhere in the 600 to 800 pound tensile strength, but it depends on the particular product that you have. There's a lot of different options out there. Now I'm going to tie a prusik knot. So I've got a loop through there. I'm going to put my two tails through as a choke. And I'm going to keep wrapping around one more time and come through my loop again. And that forms my prusik knot. I'm going to snug my prusik knot down and smooth it out. And I think I'm going to go ahead and pull my wrap around one more time. Now I'm going to tie it. I'm going to go off axis just a little bit so that I'm pulling it in a direction that keeps my wrap tight. I'm going to take my longer end, drop it behind the locking rail. And I see I've put a loop in it ahead of time, so I've got a figure 8 with a loop. I'm going to put my tail through there and snug that up. I don't want to snug it too tight because I want the load to stay on the other line, but I want it tight enough that it holds the wrap. Now I'm going to take my tail, I'm going to tie, I'm going to tie a half hitch with a bite and snug it down. I'm going to keep it kind of pinched there so it holds it where I put it until I get the half hitch down against it. Now I've got a loop that I can pull out pretty easy, but because it pulls out pretty easy, I'm going to put a second half hitch on it. That will be easy to untie because it doesn't have the actual load on it, but it secures that pull line. All right, so there we've got a line set that's secured to allow it to be out of balance, and used a snub line to do it.
All right, so let's go ahead and talk about that one for a hot second. Of the methods that we're going through, that is probably my least favorite method. It takes time. It's a little time consuming, and also it is possible for your load to get transferred to the snub line if things start to slip. It's also really important to keep in mind that, as he mentioned with stash cord, there's a wide range of breaking strengths on those. And note that those are breaking strengths, not working load limits, which there is a very big difference between the two that, well, that's not the topic of this seminar. But it's important to know that if you're using a stash cord, I want to make sure you're using something that's appropriate. If you don't know the breaking strength of it, you probably shouldn't be using it for this particular method. But once again, just like the other methods, this is something that you really do need to just learn it hands-on and have some, no pun intended, show you the ropes. Once again, that is the snub method. Not my favorite. It just takes a lot of time. And honestly, the load can transfer to the snub line pretty easily if something were to shift in the system. But it's a completely legitimate method. It is safe. This is a method that if you know they're not going to be loading the arbor right away, and you need to go pull in another line that's not going to be out of balance, you can tie this and walk a few feet away, but make sure that you walk away, you do what you need to do, and you walk right back. You do not want to leave this unattended, just the same as all the other methods. So now that we've talked about securing the systems, now what? Well, once it's secured, if your arbor's up at the loading bridge, get it in balance. Make it a balanced system. If your arbor's not there, it's time to ask yourself some really important questions. You want to ask yourself, how far out of balance is this system? Is it 50 pounds? Is it 500? You want to ask yourself if you are capable of continuing in a safe manner. once again, just driving it home, these methods are for people who are qualified to be doing them. So just take a moment and ask, can I do this safely? Do I have enough help? Do I know the best method for this? If the answers to all those questions are things you're comfortable with, then you proceed to mitigating the issue. And let's go ahead. Let me check and make sure I don't have any questions. All right, we're still good on questions. So let's go ahead and move on to talk about mitigating the issues. And once again, I'm going to play this video. I'm going to stop it a couple times. I'm going to talk about some of the methods as we go.
All right, so we're going to talk a little bit now about how to deal with an operator or a line set that's out of weight. There are various reasons that a line set could be out of weight. I'm going to pick a real common one, would be that we're hanging a piece of scenery that's laying on the floor and been assembled, but it hangs from cables. So you have to lift it up some to where the cables take weight, and then gradually take the weight of the whole piece to where you'll be balanced. In that case, you're going to have to run it for a certain distance to take the slack out of those cables and start taking weight. So in that kind of circumstance, we either knew or we've estimated the weight of the piece of scenery. We've had our weight loader add that amount of weight to the arbor, and now we need to slip it out to where the cables start to take tension and we can get the scenery piece flown off the floor so that it's balanced, that we can check and make sure that it's balanced. In this case, we've had the line secured while they were loading the weight and building the scenery, and now we're done loading the weight, we're done building the scenery, we're ready to float the piece. In this case, I've got the line set secured with a rope binder. I'm going to bring it over here and I'm going to take the rope binder off and keep my hands squeezed on the operating line and hold the wrap in it just with my hands. I'm going to open the lock slowly to ensure that I'm in fact in control of it with the wraps. And then I'm going to take the line here and I'm going to let it try to slide. Now, it's not out of balance too much that I can barely make it run right now. So I'm going to grab it here below that first wrap, and I'm going to take that wrap off. I'm going to lean back into it, and I'm going to see if it'll run now. And now it'll run a little bit. So with that wrap on there, I can just keep feeding it. And anytime if I need to slow down or stop, or they're getting the scenery straightened out to stand the rest of the way up, all I got to do is lean back into it and keep that wrap tight. And I can keep letting it slide until the piece of scenery is floating. And at the point when this piece of scenery is floating away, and gradually, slowly let that transfer to both lines and check the weight to make sure it's balanced. All
right, so let's talk about that one. All right, so the wrap method of moving a system that's out of balance, it's a really good method. You can control a lot of weight or a lot of out of balance weight through this method. The downside to this method is that it is all on you. It's all in your hands. You want to be very careful. Keep your fingers away from the wraps. Don't let your hand get sucked into it. That kind of stuff. As far as the actual operation of this method goes, I love it because you can add wraps if you don't have enough control. You can take wraps off if it's not sliding smoothly. So you do have a lot of control with this method. But once again, it is all on you as an individual. Coming up next, we're going to talk about the axe handle method, which once again is pretty much my preferred method. So let's go ahead and roll into that.
So another method of handling an out of weight load would be with an axe handle. So, or a similar stick, but an axe handle is a pretty handy piece of hardware to be able to acquire easily. In this case, the load has been, or the line set has been secured with an axe handle. The weight loader has added the appropriate amount of weight for the piece of scenery we're getting ready to fly. And the piece of scenery is assembled. So now we're ready to let the pipe slide out, slip it out until it takes the weight of the piece of scenery, and we can float the scenery and see whether we're balanced. I'm going to pull the axe handle out, and I'm going to feel here that, it's still tight enough. I've got enough wraps on it. It won't move anywhere. So I'm going to tilt my axe handle and take a wrap off and pull it down into the wrap. Make sure the wrap's tight. I'm going to try it again. I'm going to raise the axe handle up, and it's still got enough friction that it won't run by itself. So I'm going to take another wrap off. And this process is easier or more difficult depending on how much out of weight you are. The farther out of weight you are, the more sensitive it will be, and the more obvious it will be whether you can or can't take more wraps off. So now I'm down to just 2 wraps. I'm only about 80 pounds out of balance right now, so it's really doesn't take a lot of friction to hold 80 pounds. But we're going to raise it up here, and it still doesn't want to run. So I'm going to take another wrap off. And now when I slip, now it'll start to run, okay? And if we were farther out of balance, then it would probably have done that with 1 additional wrap than what we have right now. But right now we're just down to about 1.5 wraps on it. But you see that as I raise it, that allows the wrap to come loose and it'll move. When I pull the axe handle down against the wrap, that tightens the wrap back up and stops the load from moving. And so at this point, we would slip it out and watching our load start to float. And once the load was completely floated, then we would grab our wraps and get the axe handle out of the way. Grab it down here right at the bottom of the wraps so that you've still got a hold of both lines. And at this point, check and see how it feels, whether it's balanced or not balanced with the piece of scenery on it. So that if you're not balanced, you can talk to your weight loader. If you have a mid-level loading bridge, you may need to go down and adjust it at the mid-level loading bridge, or you may need to let the arbor down to where you could adjust weight down here.
All right. So let's talk about my favorite method here. All right, so the axe handle is my preferred method. What I like about it is it keeps my fingers out of the rope, but it's still utilizing the wraps. So if you want to go slower, you pull down the axe handle, or you let up if you want to go a little bit faster. But it gives you a lot of control while it keeps your fingers nice and far away. One of the tours I did that I keep talking about where I had that giant video wall, once we had the first row built, that could be up to 1,000 pounds out of balance. I would not recommend ever trying to do this with something that far out of weight. But just give you an idea that those wraps can hold a lot of weight. I think on that particular one, I usually had a dozen or so wraps in it when I started, but I also was only moving a foot at a time for them to build more video wall. Once again, wouldn't recommend it, but it is something that's possible. But I just really do like the axe handle method because it keeps your fingers out of the rope. It keeps it nice and safe. And if things start to get away from you, you just grab that axe handle and you pull it straight down. And that will stop the load. Let's take a look at the questions. Let's see. What about using a weight sled with rope and arbor heavy and a capstan hoist for the batten heavy? Jeremy, that is actually a wonderful method that I don't touch on in this. It's just a little bit more technology than what you can expect a venue to have. Venues who have them, great. They're wonderful tools. They definitely would be preferred to some of these methods. but it's not something you can really count on having if you walk into a roadhouse. So that's why I'm not really touching on those much. But looking at your next comment, keeps full load engaged at all times. Yeah, you're correct. Keeps everything engaged. It keeps everything controlled. It's a good example of using technology to get around the issue, which actually is something that I'll touch on a little bit towards the end, is some of the newer technology out there for mitigating some of these issues. And Justin, bull line is actually on my list. If you hold on just a second, we'll get to that one here in a few minutes. All right, so let's go ahead and move on with the video.
All right, another circumstance which can happen sometimes is that you could end up running the load out of balance just with a rope binder. I wouldn't recommend this as a conscious choice, but if a circumstance comes up where it's the best choice given the options, it can be done. The problem with running with the binder is that it's more difficult to control, and you really don't have any redundancy. If you lose control or something doesn't go right, the binder is more easy to lose control of. But if you're running it with a binder, what happens is you're going to take it loose, and as you let it off, it's going to start to run. As the ropes become closer to parallel, it'll start to run. But you have to hold it. It wants to travel, so you have to hold it in position. Sometimes it'll want to run up down, depending on whether it's pipe heavy or arbor heavy. But depending on the amount of weight out of balance, this is very feasible. With a heavier load than this, becomes a little dicier. But for a medium amount of out of balance load, not terribly unreasonable. A binder such as this, or this particular one, will hold about 600 slip, but that's with it locked full up. If you put more than 600 pounds on the arbor, it'll run with the binder on it, just to give you some kind of a point of reference. Running it with any more than, I'm going to say 300 pounds out of balance, gets real dicey, and I would not recommend going there. But just to cover all the bases, it is possible to run it with a moderate sized out of balance load just with a binder. And you see, as you pull the lever down, it stops it. But if you're fighting it to go down, if it's trying to travel down, or if it's trying to travel up, then that makes it harder to control.
All right, we're going to talk about that one for a hot second, because that is definitely not one of my preferred methods. So the rope binder, as mentioned, you really don't want to do a whole lot of weight with that one. My old man says 300 pounds. I honestly would put that closer to 200, because as he demonstrated, it does slide up and down the rope as you're going. And it's one of those, there are no wraps there. It's not like, when you're doing it with a wrap and you just pull down the loop to stop, or an axe handle where you just pull down to stop. With a rope binder, you have to be in 100% control the entire time, because if it starts to get away from you, it's gone. There is no getting it back. They work in a pinch. They are an acceptable method, but generally speaking, they are not my first choice. Looking at the comment section real quick. Nathan, let's see. I use pieces of broom handle. Hey, that actually is exactly what I was doing with the axe handle. There's no reason not to do that. It is a good method. It is a safe method. You can use the broom handle. I personally just do the axe handles because I know I can pick them up in a large quantity. So usually at Rural King or something like that, I just go down, pick up a pack of them, and that way I can carry them around as part of my kit when I'm touring. But no, the broom handles work. Large dowel rods work. You just need something that's a good solid piece of hardwood. But yeah, broom handles are a perfectly acceptable substitution for the axe handle. All right, and moving back to the video, we're going to get to that bull line now that Justin was asking about. All right, here we go. So another way of dealing with an out-of-weight arbor is a bull line. With bull lines, the most important thing to know is you always want to make sure that you're right next to the lift line. You want to make sure that the load is distributed in such a manner that it's going straight up the lift line, straight through the blocks, and straight to the arbor, so that you don't accidentally damage your pipes. When you're tying a bull line, my preferred method is actually going to be a bowline. However, I'm going to make sure that I've got 2 wraps around the pipe before I tie my bowline. So I've got my 2 wraps, and I come down here, tie my bowline, and you've got the bowline. Another option is you can use a clove hitch with 2 safeties on here, but personally don't like that method just for fear of the knot rolling out. The third acceptable method is not to have a knot at all. What you'll do is you'll actually take your rope and just pull it through until you're at the center. This method is very common when you're in a situation where the rope can't live with the pipe. However, if the rope can live with the pipe or it's only for short, I highly recommend the bowline. So once you've got your bowline on, you would let your flyman know that the bowline is on and they can start operating. Usually, you'll use the bowline to help them control it. For example, let's say you've got some scenery that are on downtails. You've got 30-foot. Well, in order to help the flyman, you would have a couple of guys hold this rope and just keep tension on it to try and alleviate some of the out-of-weight issues he'll have. The other thing, which we'll show you in just a minute, is you actually can help get the arbor back up to the loading bridge for them to take the brakes off using a bull line. And actually, I'll show you that here in just a second. All right, so helping the flyman with a bolt line is kind of an art form. One of the things that you need to know is how to properly hold the bolt line, which my preferred method, as you see here, is I actually take the rope, I put a giant loop in it, and I stand it. While I'm standing it, I would make sure to keep my 2 ropes together like this. What this does is it allows some friction to help keep my loop together, but also this way, if I were to lose it, it's not like I've got a loop tied. It's not going to take me for a ride. It's going to just run, which is catastrophic, but it's better than going for a ride. The other thing about this method is if the flyman is wanting the arbor to come in so the pipe to go out, this is a good way to control it because I just slack a little bit. I don't know if you can see, but the rope is sliding. It's sliding through my hands, down around my shoe, and then back up towards the pipe. So I've stopped to say that we're trying to get the pipe to come in. The flyman is going to call. Usually you're going to have 2 or 3 guys on this rope, but it's only about 80 pounds out of weight, so I'm all right doing it myself. So when the flyman calls that they want the pipe to come in, you're going to grab up high, and you're going to pull. And you're going to just keep pulling. Now, if the flyman tells me he wants me to stop, I'm going to stop here. I'm going to grab one. I'm going to start making this loop again. Which as soon as I can, I get a foot in there. At this point in time, I can actually step into it to bring it down and bring it to a rest again. But the important thing is that you're always communicating with your flyman and with any other bull lines. So, yeah, that's just it. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this the rest of the way in. And the other thing to keep in mind is normally when you pull the bull line in, when the pipe gets to you, the flyman's going to yell something about grabbing the pipe. When you grab a pipe, you want to pull it down, and you want to keep your weight on it, but you do not want to get over it. A good method that I highly recommend is the forearm and hand method. This way you've got your weight on it, but if something were to happen, you're not going to catch a pipe to the face when it flies past you. And I believe that covers the basics of operating with a bolt line. All right, let's talk about that. All right, so let's take a look real quick at the comments, make sure I didn't miss anything. I see you guys are talking about the axe handles a little bit, and Nathan, you are correct that the axe handle is a bigger, stouter option. I have never personally seen a broom handle break, Jeremy, but it can happen. But yeah, so that's the axe handle method. But getting back to the bull line method that we just saw the video for. With the bull line, the real important thing is you make sure your connection to that pipe is right next to your lift line. If you put it between the lift lines, you actually can bend your batten pretty easily. So you want to make sure that that point load is right there next to the lift line. Typically, you want to have a couple of people on a bull line. Just more bodies, more help is a good thing. That being said, in the video, obviously I did it solo. That's because it was only 80 pounds out of weight, and that was just for demonstration purposes. So make sure you're being careful with that. Are there any questions about bull lines? Because I know I glazed over a lot of information there, but a lot of it I repeated a couple of times in the video. Going to go ahead and wait for a second. Going once. Going twice. All right. Well, if you do have a question, drop it in the comments. I will see it when we talk about the next method, which is the last method we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about getting some help from the rail next.
Another circumstance to be aware of when you're running something out of weight is if you have to run it all the way out of balance. So you're going to bring an Arbor heavy line set all the way to pipe out, counterweight down. The thing to be aware of is that no matter which method you're using to run the out of balance load, whether you're using just with wraps like this, whether you've got an axe handle in it, whether you've got a binder on it, any of the methods that we've talked about, there comes a point where the arbor gets so close to you that you can't keep the wraps on it. So if you have a load that's excessive, more than you can hold by yourself with one person, then you have to make sure that you have some help with you before that arbor gets all the way down. Because there's going to be a point where it's going to get down here. And with only 80 pounds, I can deal with it myself. But if it was more than that, if it was 180, say, then it gets to a point where my wraps don't work anymore because the arbor is so close that I can't keep the wraps on it. So at that point, you have to make sure that you have enough help so that when you take the wraps off, you have enough help to just hold it and run it in that last 3 or 4 feet, just manually one-to-one. So for 80 pounds, it's not a big deal. But for a larger amount of weight, you have to be thinking ahead and prepared to have enough help here to be able to set that arbor all the way down on the crash rail. All right, another thing to keep in mind as far as talking about having help around would be that you do have the option to take advantage of your help on the loading bridge. If we had, for instance, we had a heavy black velour drape that we needed to bring all the way in. And I can't pull that by myself. It weighs more than I can pull by myself. I can bring a deckhand over or another person from my flight crew over to help me pull, but then we're side by side and trying to pull in the same space. So can be done, has been done many times. But another option is that you can ask your weight loaders to help pull. In that case, probably you're going to want to be the one to land the piece, and you're going to ask your weight loaders to stand by to help you pull it. So on the loading bridge, standing by for a pull on 23 on my call. So I'm going to bring it in. I'm going to see the goods touch the ground, and then I'm going to call for help. The rub on 23! And they're going to help me pull it. So that adds however many people I have on the weight bridge to help me pull. Now, if it's heavy, when it gets all the way down here, we all three are, say I've got 2 weight loaders up, we're all 3 pulling. When it hits the deck and the pipe hits all the way down, the next step then is I'm going to need to secure it while they unload it. So right now, I still got them help me hold it. I'm going to get some, and I'm going to take a wrap on it. I'm going to turn my wraps around it. And I'm going to put my binder on it. All right, pipe 23 to pipe weight. And then I'll step away so that I'm not directly under where they're working at.
All right, let's talk about that for a hot second here. All right, so that method, it's really one of the simplest methods for handling the system. You're utilizing the people that are already there. The real trick is communication, and the individual on the rail is the person in charge. Just when they yell to pull on the rope, you pull on the rope. If they tell you to stop pulling on the rope, you stop pulling on the rope. But it's all about communication, which is really true for a lot of things that we're doing here. Is it's all about making sure everyone on the crew is talking to each other. That being said, we're going to move on, and there's actually some new technology out there that I think the first one was only installed a couple weeks ago. It's called the trap, and it actually mitigates all of this, because if a system is out of weight using this piece of technology, you can't move it. It won't let you move. So I'm going to show you a quick video from one of the guys that actually designed it. Just take you through some of this interesting technology that's out there. Honestly, there's always new technology, and I really love when I see something like this pop onto the market to help keep people safe.
Hi, my name is Rick Boychuk. Richard Nix and I invented the Arbor Trap. The Arbor Trap is intended to mitigate against out-of-balance line sets and runaway arbors. The image that you're looking at right now shows the results of an arbor runaway. That's what we want to avoid. The Arbor Trap is a relatively simple device. However, it took 18 months to conceive of it and make it real. So this is an Arbor Trap that's on my bench. This one is manufactured by Bellatex, one of 8 licensed manufacturers of the Arbor Trap. It's simply a box that bolts to the building, to the structural steel, and it has these 2 flaps. They work in opposition to each other, in conjunction with each other, and they just simply open and close. You're going to see that in a moment. They're closed, that's open. The other one's closed, it opens. But they do that together. And it is simple. It had to be. The aperture where my hands are located at the moment, and that's where the lines of the head block come through, and the operating line. In addition to the trap itself, there are these 2 blades, and the blades will fit onto either a front arbor or a conventional rod arbor. So these can be retrofit into your facility if you've got rod arbors. This pattern that you see on this profile is part of the operating principle. This is a test we did at the first installation, which is the Grand Theatre in London, Ontario. That's trap number 9 being used right now, and the trap's going to come up. You'll see them now, and the blades go into the trap. They become engaged, and now the trap is being held by the arbor. So now to release the trap, you have to be able to lift it 2 inches. And you're going to, I paused here. You're going to see it in a moment. The blades of the arbor will go up 2 inches. Then you see at the front, immediately under the 9, There's this turn back wire rope on a quick link attached to the trap. Well, that's the release plate. So we're going to watch it be released now. Here we go. And pull down, and now the arbor is released, and it's on to do its work. We're going to take another look, a closer look from a different angle. There we have number 27. You can see the lines are running, the blades come up, they enter the trap, go up through the trap, and now if you lower the arbor, it's now engaged in the trap. You release it, and it's now out of the trap. As simple as that. It took 18 months to figure that out. So simple, but not easy. Anyway, that is the Arbor Trap. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
All right. So let's talk about that for a second. So the Arbor Trap, like I said, it's this new thing that's on the market. I have not personally played with them yet, but there's two opinions I'm willing to render on this thing so far. And that's that, one, I think this would be a great device in educational institutions, places where you are training people. Because if, say, you misguess the weight of a piece out on the batten, your weight loaders say they load 400 pounds on, because that's what you told them, but really it should have been 3. You're not going to be able to easily get that arbor out of the trap. It is going to, be 100 pounds out of weight. So by using technology, you have sort of mitigated the entire issue. And honestly, with a device like this, you wouldn't need most of the techniques that I've talked about. The other thing I'm willing to say is that if they start putting these into, say, IA roadhouses, there's going to be a lot of cursing going on. Because they're great devices, they're awesome. But I can just envision a situation where you didn't want to get stuck in the trap, but you did anyways. For example, like if you're doing a bounce focus with your lights, you bring the lights in to focus. Well, if you take the arbor too far up and it hits the trap, and there's not anybody up on the loading bridge to release it, somebody's going to have to climb up there. But yeah, so just showing you guys that there is technology out there to get around all this. And also remind everyone to keep your ears open. There's always new technology floating around. If it's not this, I'm sure there are other things. If you want a list of the vendors that have been licensed for this particular technology, feel free to shoot me an email, and I can get you the full list of the vendors that use this. And let's see. All right, so just to wrap up, we talked about what is an out-of-balance system. We talked about why they're dangerous, some common reasons why systems become unbalanced, ways to secure an out-of-balance system, and some manners of moving it. And I am Tyler DeLong of DeLong Rigging Solutions. Don't hesitate to reach out to us at hello@delongriggingsolutions.com. And also check out our website. If you like the videos I used in this seminar, I have a whole bunch more on there in the one-shot training program, which are a whole bunch of free videos that cover everything from knots to basic rigging math. And on that note, if there are any last-minute questions, this would be a great time for them. Let's see. So I got a question from Clint. Your thoughts on loading small number of weights from the ground rather than the load gallery? I think that's a great method. I have done that. That being said, usually if I'm doing that, I am playing on that system. You're going to be playing on the system to be out of balance as you're getting those weights up to the loading bridge. It's a good method. It's an acceptable method. It just means you're going to need the guys up on the loading bridge to help you pull, or a couple extra guys on the ground to help them pull. And I see another person seconded that question. Yeah, if you don't have a loading gallery, it's perfectly acceptable to load the arbor and then pull it up and load the pipe. If you're doing that, though, I'd recommend using bull lines, which I think one of you already mentioned. But if not, I talked about them. You can always rewatch this video. With bull lines, get a couple bull lines on there so you've got people to help you pull the pipe back in. as the arbor is going out. And once again, it's really all about communication. We're using bull lines. Does that cover your question, Clint?
Hey, while we allow Clint a couple of seconds there to, or somebody else to write in some questions, I'll just jump in for a second. I apologize for the internet glitches, audio glitches. I'll make sure to check, internet speeds, connectivity better in the future. I apologize again for that, those little glitches there. This video will be available on YouTube in the future. Tyler, just let's say, you discussed an awful lot, so I'll just kind of reiterate, if you don't mind, that proper training is the way to go before you attempt any of these on your own. And you covered only a very, very small portion of, I'm not a rigging professional, but I know you covered a very small portion of rigging, expertise. Hopefully USITT can help with some of this learning in the future. When we get back to in-person, and I know it's been years, we've been able to hold 2 to 3 in-person rigging classes a year around the country. The Jay Glarum rigging classes. We have entry-level, intermediate, and advanced levels classes. So hopefully, and those are 2 days long, hands-on and classroom-based. So hopefully USITT can help be your resource in the future, along with DeLong Rigging Solutions and all the other companies we work with. While we give a couple more seconds to write in some questions, do you have anything else you'd like to add today?
The only things I really want to add is, as you mentioned, there is no replacement for hands-on quality training. Just in-person training, especially when we're talking about rigging, is the way to go. You want someone who knows what they're doing there to help you learn and to help make sure you're staying safe while you're learning. But also, feel free to check out DeLongRiggingSolutions.com. I mentioned we've got the one-shot training program, which is a collection of videos that really are great brush-ups. They're not standalone. They're not going to teach you how to be a rigger all by yourself, but they will give you the tools to be able to ask the right questions when you are learning with that qualified individual. And also, I do webinar series. I do not currently have one scheduled, but I will be doing one in the fall. If that is something you're interested in, hop on my website, get on my email list, and I'll let you know when the next one gets scheduled.
Just for those of you who are interested, obviously most of you found this webinar listed on the USITT homepage already. Today is obviously mitigation of an out-of-balance counterweight system. Again, thank you, Tyler, for being here. We have a few other conversations scheduled. Conversations, webinars, education, whatever you want. Hopefully USITT is your resource. We do have an up-rigging, beams, and you know what, MEWPs. I don't even know that acronym, to tell you the truth. That's Phil Van Hest, ETCP certified rigger and instructor. We'll be offering that for arena rigging later in August. For those of you who don't know, USITT holds a conference every year, and hopefully again we'll be in person in March in Baltimore, and we hope to see Tyler DeLong in some fashion, or DeLong Rigging Resources joining us. DeLong Rigging Solutions. That's why I hung up on my words right there. Hopefully in Baltimore in March. Tyler, I don't see any more questions, so I think this is our viewership is dropping some. There's a few hanging on. Thanks for being here today. Appreciate it. You can always write to me at Christine, CHRISTINE, at USITT.org. If you have any questions, get in touch with me there. If there are no other questions, Tyler, I think we'll wrap it up for today. Any parting thoughts, closing thought, or just a thank you and goodbye?
I just thank you, everyone, for coming, and make sure you're being safe while you're learning what you're learning out there.
Excellent. Thank you, folks. Ending the break.